I think Crystal was good too, but I think as good as she was, to me, the bigger thing is when you actually have somebody on these shows that is willing to actually go to the mat, because most of the people that are on with Bill Maher don't challenge him that much from the right or the left. It really exposes how little these multi-million-dollar anchors really know.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board, because people would be surprised when I traveled covering the presidential campaigns and I would talk to these corporate journalists. I don't want to say they're stupid, but a lot of them are fucking stupid and really don't know the basics, because they're in their own little bubble.
When we were at the Bernie Sanders party in Iowa during the caucus, there was a certain New York Times writer there that totally clueless.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's get to that cluelessness. Colin, let's play Crystal and Bill Maher. We won't play the whole thing, but let's start it, and we'll kind of cut in and out.
Part of this inflationary problem is because we put too much money into the economy. There's way too much government spending, and that's why we have inflation. So that's a large part of that. It's just basic economics.
And that is not basic economics. We had this thing called a pandemic. We had a supply chain crisis. And by the way, there's a war in Ukraine.
It's played a role.
So to act like the only reason we have problems now is because people got a little bit of money in their bank account is just not honest.
And a little bit of money, they got more than we spent in World War II. So don't act like...
Hold on.
Hold on. Don't act like... You said don't act. Don't act like we had to react to the pandemic exactly the way we did. We had to spend $6 trillion.
Okay, but how about the trillions that the Federal Reserve shot at Wall Street? For some reason, people don't get upset about that. And that fueled the trillions of dollars the Federal Reserve shot at Wall Street to backstop the stock market and the bond market. No one gets upset about that, even though that was a massive
I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean shot at Wall Street? When are we talking about?
We're talking about buying assets, buying stocks, buying bonds, buying treasury bills so that they expand the balance sheet. This is during the crisis, the coronavirus crisis. When the stock market crashed, that is what the Fed did. They went into action. They shot trillions of dollars.
But the stock market didn't crash during COVID.
Now it's crashing.
So... Bill Maher must have been by his fish pond in Beverly Hills in March and April 2020. I know he's a multimillionaire. He used to be a real lefty. I don't really know what's happened to him. But the stock market did crash. The only reason it wasn't like 1929 is because the Federal Reserve came in and shot, as Crystal said, a cannon of money to buy up bonds and other assets.
I got to take aim, and I think Crystal was about to do it, but he cut her off at his claim about World War II. Like they've been given more money now than we did during World War II. Adjusted for where we are now, adjusted wages, adjusted inflation, that's totally hogwash.
Oh, complete bullshit. They got a $1,400 check, unemployment, which, by the way, a lot of people couldn't even get the unemployment. A lot of people didn't get the $1,400 check.
Bill knows that. He's looking at a total dollar amount, and if you don't adjust that from the time period of, the 1940s, what have you,
right
now you're a moron. I mean, can I say that?
Yeah, of course. Say whatever you want.
Or you're trying to put out a certain, narrative that people aren't going to question, that makes you, kind of sell your side, but you're doing it in a disingenuous way.
Right, but also, I mean, the coronavirus relief bill, as I showed on the road last year, because I did a reporting trip during the pandemic, millions of people were being evicted despite the federal moratorium. I was showing all over the country, people were being evicted. So Bill Maher maybe read some headlines, but he kind of must have been so high that he just totally missed this day. Colin, this one, the coronavirus crash of 2020 and the investing lesson that it caught. The coronavirus crash of 2020, as the pandemic began, it spread in March, and government officials around the world shut down economic activity. Panic triggered by the economic consequences and uncertainty led to a stock market crash that included the three worst point drops in U.S. history. On Monday, March 9th, the Dow fell 2,014 points. On March 12th, the Dow then set another record by falling 2,352 points. Finally, on March 16th, the Dow plummeted nearly 3,000 points. I mean, doesn't he have producers or researchers to tell him these things? When Crystal points out the Fed shot money, Fed to pump in more than $1 trillion in dramatic ramping up of market intervention amid coronavirus. And by the way, that money wasn't going to give relief to waitresses or bartenders or a lot of other people that were laid off and now are part of Biden's booming economy because they got their shitty non-living wage jobs back. So this is what I'm saying, not taking anything away from Krystal. She did a great job.
No, she did a great job. Good for her. I'm glad she got in his face.
I've always joked to my wife, I actually make less money by doing research and going to talk to people around the country and like doing interviews with real people. I'll always make less money because you fail upward in this industry, and you've seen it. You've seen it. And look, like you fail upward by how little you know, by taking efforts to not know things. It's intentional. Because Bill Maher's not a moron. Like he knows these things, but he comes from such a privileged position. I mean, coronavirus, other than it being a pain in the ass, maybe him not being able to do his road shows as much, it didn't affect him at all economically. Right. So he comes from such a privileged position that the problem, and he has this dipshit on to give right-wing talking points.
Yeah, who was the other dipshit?
The author, an author of some history on gay something. I don't know the name.
God. I mean,
Secret City. I don't know what it is. He's
sort of putting these things out during the interview as axioms of economics, and every single one of those statements that he makes can absolutely be challenged by different theories. I mean, for him to say that's
right, but it's just amazing because Bill Maher, people like him, and it's same thing on MSNBC, CNN. They kind of glide by under the premise that they're not like Harvard scholars, but they're up on current events, they're up on the news, whatever. They have an edge. But Krystal was just reciting shit, just like bonds, markets. It's like, what are you talking about? When was this crash?
Yeah.
And he thought he was getting her. Like, when was this? What are you talking about? So it's just illuminating. People need to realize it's not just part of why we named this status coup, if you're new to this, was because we need a coup d'etat of the corporate status quo. But the corporate status quo, it's not just intentional propaganda they put out. It is built in. It's an incentive in corporate media. The View too. The View.
Yeah. Oh God, The View's the worst.
I mean, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar. There is an incentive not to do your homework, not to have to know complex things like the bond markets, not to have to know much about the stock market, not to actually have to even research, much less give a shit about the donors funding these politicians. So I think Krystal kind of exposed that Bill Maher is not only full of shit and kind of a right winger now, but he doesn't know a lot about the things he's talking about. Let's continue.
Crashing now.
It crashed and the Fed came in and backstopped it. That's what happened.
It crashed and we never heard about it?
No, it crashed. Go back and look at it.
I think
it fell off a cliff. The Treasury bond market stopped functioning and the Fed took extraordinary action it's never taken in history.
I don't
somehow no one
that.
gets upset.
The first week of
Somehow nobody gets upset about the rich people who got tons of money and tons of support, way more than working class people did.
Sure,
but my God, people were able to feed their kids and they had a little bit of money in their bank accounts. It was the worst thing in the world.
No.
That is one small part of the inflation story. And it is, by the way, not the only thing that we can deal with to get out of this mess.
Well, gas prices.
Biden
is it a small part, Jamie?
Gas prices we can largely attribute to an administration that's been waging war on the fossil fuel industry.
That's ridiculous.
And
they
now
drilled more than everybody. I mean,
that's a talking point.
U.S. production.
No.
Okay, U.S. production is up.
Well,
it will be at record levels next year.
Okay, well,
the fossil fuel companies themselves are flush with cash, but will not invest in new drilling because they would rather give it to their shareholders.
Okay, all right,
That's the truth.
You got to be kidding me. As somebody that froze his little Jewish tushy off in Standing Rock for 7 months. I was in minus 15 degree weather. Okay, I could tell you we have been fed a lie. Yeah, and I say we. I want to be clear. Native Americans have been sacrificed. Black and brown people have been sacrificed because that's where these pipelines are going through predominantly. Yeah, to a lesser degree, some poorer white areas. The pipelines, the uranium mining, you name it, are all going through the most oppressed and poor and marginalized people in this country. And we've been told it's for energy independence. So when this fucking idiot, and of course Bill Maher didn't correct him, I'm glad Krystal did, is saying that because this administration is at war with the fossil.
That is absurd. That is an absurd statement. I mean, God, they get subsidies for fuck's sake. I mean, war with the fossil fuel industry has never happened in this country. That is
In fact, Biden's the one, I mean, one of the few good things he ran on, which I didn't think he'd actually do, was we're going to stop drilling on public lands. It wouldn't go far enough, but it was something. He hasn't increased
on that. Yeah.
He's increased drilling on public lands. Secondly, doesn't it seem kind of suspect? I mean, Obama, you remember he was bragging, hey, natural gas has increased largest amount in history.
Right.
Under my presidency.
Right.
Well, wasn't the point of that natural gas? It's not natural, by the way. It's methane and very dangerous. But wasn't the point of that? So we don't have to rely on Russia, Saudi Arabia, or any of the other fucking criminal oil cartels around the world. So we could drill and we could frack. No, because the truth is, all of this was being exported. All of this, Dakota Access Pipeline, Keystone, if it was built, they say, oh, we are where we are because Keystone was blocked. Keystone would have been sent elsewhere. It's absurd. The reality is that the prices of oil, and Steve can get into this, Steve Grumbine, but the price of oil is up so much because basically you have demand was deflated during COVID. It is now up, and instead of adding to production, all these oil companies, they're not refining more. They're just saying, well, we'll charge up the wazoo, and they don't have to be charging this much. And there is something Biden can do, like JFK did. He could hold a press conference. He could call out these oil companies. He could say, well, did you know, America, ExxonMobil gets X amount in free money and subsidies every year. Did you know they don't pay anything in taxes? So here's what we're going to do. We are canceling the quarterly check to ExxonMobil and Sunoco and Phillips 66 and the rest of them. You're not getting your subsidies anymore. Frankly, we're going to have our IRS be like Trump. We're gonna have our IRS. Not that Trump did this, but we're gonna have the IRS look into how little these oil companies are paying. You would see those oil companies right now. What is gas in LA right now?
I saw it downtown LA a couple days ago. I don't know where it's at today, but the last time I was down there, I saw, and I'm not kidding you, $8.32 a gallon.
Okay, that's obscene. And I mean, basically,
put that next to the fact that minimum wage in the city is $15 an hour.
Jesus Christ. Well, I don't know. If Biden did what I'm saying, my guess is it would go down pretty quickly. Not that this is acceptable. My guess is it would go down pretty much in a couple of days, $5.50, and then keep going down. Because you could actually make corporate America fold. The problem is we live in the United Corporations of America. There's the flag. He's not going to do this, which actually could help the Democrats win because the donors do not want it. And why, Tina? It's not just the oil companies that directly are fundraising Democrats, because the oil companies actually give more than the Republicans. Wall Street is heavily invested in all of these pipelines. Yeah. Wall Street is heavily invested in all these pipelines.
Chase Bank, I think, is the number one.
Yeah, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, all of them. They're all up the wazoo. Dakota Access Pipeline, Line 3, you name it.
You name it. And in fact, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had climate scientists chained themselves to the front of the Chase building downtown LA, literally chained themselves to protest Chase Bank's involvement with all this funding. And the LAPD sent out literally half the force. Right. It was insane. It was like there's 4 scientists here, unarmed scientists, chained to the bank in a protest. And you guys are what? I mean, it just tells you how important it is for to protect the wealthy class, protect property, protect banks. Like the entire system is wired around that. That is what happens. And it kind of bothers me that guy in the Bill Maher video, he's sort of, again, he's throwing out these things that they're just truths and they shouldn't be challenged, right? Like the market is the moral arbiter of everything. We cannot touch or regulate the free market. When in reality, there is no free market. We have a rigged system that's rigged towards the capitalists. It's rigged towards the wealthy classes. Nobody outside of these insular groups have the knowledge or the ability to compete on the same footing. So the idea that it's a free market is just bogus. But again, you hear these people just throw that stuff out there. And part of that is part of the part of the media being part of the problem when it comes to having any sort of adversarial journalism against what's happening in the country at this point, right? They are putting out there this kind of propaganda. And if somebody hears it enough times and it goes unchallenged again and again and again, they're not hearing any opposite voices. They just sort of go like, well, that just may be the case. Okay, so that's how it is. How I'm just gonna have to learn to get by. When that doesn't have to be this way. It absolutely doesn't. The Democratic Party at any moment can choose to give a left exit to the income inequality. They could.
Absolutely.
They choose not to.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Quo's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.